The Penlee lifeboat disaster occurred on the 19th of December 1981 off the coast of Cornwall. The Penlee lifeboat Solomon Browne went to the aid of the coaster Union Star after its engines failed in heavy seas. After the lifeboat had rescued 4 people, both vessels were lost with all hands. In all, 16 people died, including 8 volunteer lifeboatmen. MV Union Star. The MV Union Star was launched in Ringkøbing in Denmark just a few days before it was wrecked on the Cornish coast. A mini bulk carrier registered in Dublin, Ireland. It sailed to Amoden in the Netherlands to collect a cargo of fertilizer for its maiden voyage to Arklow in Ireland. It carried a crew of 5, Captain Henry Morton, Mate James Whitaker, Engineer George Sedgwick, Crewman Agostino Verasimo, and Crewman Manuel Lopes. Also on board was the captain's family, who had been picked up at an unauthorized stop on the east coast of England. His wife Dawn and teenage stepdaughters Sharon and Deanne. Near the south coast of Cornwall, 8 miles east of the Wolf Rock, the new ship's engines failed. It was unable to restart them but did not make a mayday call. Assistance was offered by tug, the Nord-Holland, under the Lloyd's open form salvage contract, but Morton initially refused the offer, later accepting after consulting his owners. Winds were gusting at up to 90 knots, hurricane force 12 on the Beaufort scale, with waves up to 60 feet high. The powerless ship was blown across Mounts Bay towards the rocks of Boscawen Cove, near Lamorna. FAA seeking helicopter. As the ship was close to shore, the Coast Guard at Falmouth summoned a Royal Navy seeking helicopter from 820 Naval Air Squadron, RNAS Culdrose. It used the call sign Rescue 80 during the mission. The aircraft was flown at night by United States Navy exchange pilot LT-CDR Russell Smith, assisted by LT Steve Marlowe, SLT Kenneth Doherty and leading air crewman Martin Kenny of the Royal Navy. They were unable to winch anyone off the ship as the waves were too violent. RNLB Solomon Browne. The Coast Guard had difficulties contacting the secretary of the nearest lifeboat, Penlee Lifeboat Station at Mousehole on the west side of the bay. They eventually contacted coxswain Trevelyan Richards and asked him to put the lifeboat on standby in case the helicopter rescue failed. He summoned the lifeboat's volunteer crew and picked 7 men to accompany him in the lifeboat. They were second coxswain mechanic Stephen Madron, assistant mechanic Nigel Brockman, emergency mechanic John Blewett, and crew members Charlie Greenhawk, Kevin Smith, Barry Torrey and Gary Wallace. Neil Brockman, the son of Nigel Brockman, got to the lifeboat station on time, but was turned down for the trip by Trevelyan Richards, who was reluctant to take out 2 members of the same family that night. The lifeboat launched at 8:12 p.m. and headed out through the storm to the drifting coaster. The lifeboat was the Solomon Browne, a wooden 47-foot Watson-class boat built in 1960 and capable of 9 knots. After it had made several attempts to get alongside, 4 people managed to jump across. The captain's family and one of the men were apparently safe. The lifeboat radioed that "We've got 4 off," but that was the last heard from either vessel. LTCDR Smith USN, the pilot of the rescue helicopter, later reported that, "The greatest act of courage that I have ever seen, and am ever likely to see, was the penultimate courage and dedication shown by the Penlee when it maneuvered back alongside the casualty in over 60 feet breakers and rescued 4 people shortly after the Penlee had been bashed on top of the casualty's hatch covers. They were truly the bravest 8 men I've ever seen, who were also totally dedicated to upholding the highest standards of the RNLI. Lifeboats were summoned from Sennen Cove, the Lizard and St. Mary's to try to help their colleagues from Penlee. The Sennen Cove lifeboat found it impossible to make headway round Land's End. The Lizard lifeboat found a serious hole in its hull when it finally returned to its slipway after a fruitless search. Wreckage from the Browne was found along the shore, and the Union Star lay capsized onto the rocks west of Tatadoo Lighthouse. Some, but not all, of the 16 bodies were eventually recovered. The inquiry into the disaster determined that the loss of the Union Star and its crew was because of the irreparable failure of the ship's engines due to contamination of fuel by seawater while off a dangerously shore, the extreme severity of the weather, wind and sea, and the capsize of the vessel on a shortly after stranding. The loss of the Browne was, in consequence of the persistent and heroic endeavors by the coxswain and his crew to save the lives of all from the Union Star. Such heroism enhances the highest traditions of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, in whose service they gave their lives. Aftermath. Coxswain Trevelyan Richards was posthumously awarded the Royal National Lifeboat Institution's Gold Medal, while the remainder of the crew were all posthumously awarded bronze medals. The station itself was awarded a Gold Medal service plaque. The disaster prompted a massive public appeal for the benefit of the village of Mousehole, which raised over £3 million. Although there was an outcry when the government tried to tax the donations. 2 nights before the disaster, Charlie Greenhaw had turned on the Christmas lights in Mousehole. After the storm, the lights were left off, but 3 days later his widow, Mary, asked for them to be repaired and lit again. The village has been lit up each December since then, but on the anniversary of the disaster they are turned off at 8 p.m. for an hour as an act of remembrance. Within a day of the disaster, enough people from Mousehole had volunteered to form a new lifeboat crew. In 1983 a new lifeboat station was opened nearby at Newlyn, where a faster, larger boat could be kept moored afloat in the harbour. Neil Brockman later became the coxswain of the station's 7-class lifeboat. The old boathouse at Penlee Point with its slipway is empty but has been maintained, and a memorial garden was created beside it in 1985 to commemorate the crew of the Browne. The Sea King helicopter involved in the rescue attempt, airframe XZ574, is today preserved at the Fleet Air Arm Museum at RNAS Yeovilton, primarily due to it having been flown by Prince Andrew, Duke of York, during the Falklands War. The disaster has been the subject of several songs. The English folk singer-songwriter Seth Lakeman wrote the song Browne, which appears on his 2008 album Poor Man's Heaven. The CD reissue of the Anthony Phillips album Invisible Men includes The Ballad of Penlee, about the incident. Paul Sermon, a Kentish folk artist who specializes in songs of the sea, recorded the incident in his song Browne, which appears on his album 1-4. Paul Kimber's Men, a sea shanty group, recorded Don't Take the Heroes on the CD of the same name. The song was written by Neil and Ros Kimber. Local band Bates Motel, based in Hale, included a song, The Last Wave, about the disaster on their album Anora. In 2015, Cornish-American bard Jim Wen's album, Half Alive in Wallaroo, featured the track The Boys of Penlee, written by fellow Cornish bard Craig Weatherhill, and featuring Weatherhill playing mellotron, whose haunting choir sound ends the song with the line, For those in peril on the sea, for the popular sailor's hymn.